Charles Carl Panzram, born on June 28, 1891, near East Grand Forks, Minnesota, was a complex and notorious figure in American criminal history. As a prolific offender, Panzram engaged in a wide range of criminal activities, including serial killing, spree killing, mass murder, rape, child molestation, arson, robbery, theft, and burglary. In chilling prison confessions and through his autobiography, Panzram admitted to the murder of 21 boys and men, with only 5 of these cases corroborated. However, suspicions linger that his actual body count could exceed 100 in the United States alone, with additional victims in Portuguese Angola. Panzram's criminal trajectory was marked by a disturbing pattern of violence, including over 1,000 acts of rape against males of all ages. His life of crime involved multiple prison terms and daring escapes. The culmination of his heinous acts led to his execution by hanging in 1930 at the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas, specifically for the murder of a prison employee. In his early life, Panzram's upbringing on a farm included harsh conditions imposed by his East Prussian immigrant parents, Johann John Gottlieb Panzram and Matilda Elizabeth Lizzie Panzram. Forced into labor on the family farm, Panzram and his siblings toiled through the night due to truancy laws that made daytime education mandatory. Punishments ranged from chaining to starvation, and Panzram, alienated from his peers, developed a troubled disposition. His father's abandonment at the age of 7 and the departure of 4 older brothers further contributed to his tumultuous childhood, marked by adversity and tragedy. Panzram's turbulent encounters with the law commenced at the young age of 8 in 1899, when he faced juvenile court charges for being drunk and disorderly. By age 11 in 1903, he found himself arrested and jailed for being drunk and labeled incorrigible. Following these incidents, Panzram's criminal tendencies intensified, leading to theft of cake, apples, and a revolver from a neighbor's home. In October 1903, Panzram's mother, seeking a solution, sent him to the Minnesota State Training School, allegedly a reform institution. Panzram, however, later revealed in his autobiography that the institution was a place of physical and sexual abuse inflicted by staff members. His disdain for the school reached a point where he successfully burned it down. On July 7, 1905, evading detection. Paroled in January 1906 from Red Wing Training School, Panzram's criminal activities escalated during his early teens, marked by alcoholism, burglary, and robbery. At age 14, he ran away from home after attempting to kill a Lutheran cleric and began living as a vagabond, frequently traveling by train cars. Panzram's life took a dark turn when he reported being gang-raped by homeless men. In the summer of 1906, he was arrested for burglary in Butte, Montana, beginning a pattern of imprisonments and escapes. Panzram's criminal pursuits included assaulting guards, refusing orders, and serving sentences in various prisons under different aliases. His criminal record included an array of thefts, culminating in imprisonments in Fresno, California, Rusk, Texas, the Dalles, Oregon, Harrison, Idaho, Butte, Montana, and others. Panzram's autobiography revealed a pattern of violence, including his admission to raping men he had robbed. Despite periods of employment, such as strike-breaking against union employees, Panzram's criminal activities persisted. Panzram claimed an escape from a chain gang in Texas, attempting to enlist in the Federales in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, and committing a murder. He continued his criminal spree with arrests in Fresno, California, and escape after 30 days in jail. In 1913, Panzram's criminal exploits included arrests in the Dalles, Oregon, and Harrison, Idaho, with escapes from jail. His imprisonment at the Montana State Prison and subsequent escape marked his transient journey through Washington, Idaho, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Rearrested in 1915 in Oregon under the alias Jeff Baldwin, Panzram faced a 7-year sentence at the Oregon State Penitentiary. His violent encounters with prison authorities and fellow inmates continued, culminating in the escape with fellow inmate Otto Hooker, who later killed a warden while evading recapture. After his discharge in 1928, Panzram's criminal activities persisted. He embarked on an 8-year murder spree across multiple countries, targeting sailors and committing heinous acts with stolen money, sailing a yacht named Akista. His crimes included rapes and murders, with the spree ending after the yacht sank near Atlantic City, New Jersey. Upon his final capture in 1928 for burglary in Baltimore, Panzram confessed to killing 3 young boys. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. While at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, he murdered a prison foreman and refused any appeals. Panzram's unrepentant attitude continued until his execution by hanging on September 5, 1930, leaving a chilling legacy of brutality and violence. List of Carl Panzram criminal activities. Juvenile offences, 1899-1903. Drunk and disorderly at age 8 in 1899. Drunk and incorrigible at age 11 in 1903. Theft and escapes, 1903-1906. Stole cake, apples and a revolver, 1903. Burned down the Minnesota State Training School, 1905. Escaped from Red Wing Training School, 1906. Burglary and imprisonment, 1906-1907. Burglary in Butte, Montana, 1906. Assaulted a guard, escaped from Montana State Reform School, 1907. Military service and imprisonment, 1907-1910. Larceny conviction in the U.S. Army, 1908-1910. Continued criminal activities, 1910-1917. Escaped from a chain gang in Texas, 1910. Multiple arrests, escapes, and imprisonments under various aliases, 1910-1917. Escapes and criminal exploits, 1917-1923. Escaped from Montana State Prison, 1913. Crimes as a vagabond, including break-ins and arson, 1913-1923. Violence, escapes and imprisonment, 1920-1923. Newport robbery and Taft Mansion burglary, 1920. A Keister yacht murder spree, including rape and murder, 1920-1921. Crimes in Angola, including rape and murder, 1921. Return to the U.S., rape and murder of 2 small boys, 1922. Crimes as a night watchman in Yonkers, 1923. Final capture and imprisonment, 1928-1930. Baltimore arrest for burglary, 1928. Confessed to killing 3 young boys, 1928. Murdered a prison foreman at Leavenworth, 1929. In the shadowy alleys of early 20th century New York, a sinister presence emerged, leaving a trail of unspeakable horrors. This is the chilling tale of Albert Fish, known by many names: the Grey Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire. Born in 1870, Albert Fish's life was a descent into madness, marked by gruesome crimes that would shock the nation. Join us as we delve into the twisted mind of a serial killer, rapist and cannibal who terrorized the city from 1924 to 1928. Fish's early years hinted at the darkness within, an abusive orphanage, sadomasochistic tendencies, and a growing obsession with pain. We unravel the roots of his depravity and the makings of a true monster. The 1920s witnessed Fish's reign of terror, targeting innocent children. We explore the harrowing details of his crimes, from abductions to unspeakable acts, as the city grappled with a predator who eluded justice. Authorities faced a daunting task as Fish became a suspect in numerous murders. Dive into the race against time to apprehend a man who confessed to heinous acts, leaving a chilling trail of evidence. The courtroom became a stage for a grotesque spectacle. Fish's trial exposed a web of perversions and dark fantasies. Explore the shocking details of the legal proceedings that sought justice for the victims. Peer into the twisted mind of Albert Fish through psychiatric evaluations. Uncover a man unhinged, driven by delusions and a dark obsession with pain. What drove this monster to commit unthinkable acts? Fish's malevolence knew no bounds. His known victims included Francis McDonnell, 8 in 1924, Billy Gaffney, 4 in 1927, and Grace Budd, 10 in 1928. Yet, suspicions lingered over other potential victims, their fates entwined with the sinister legacy of Albert Fish. In the chilling letter to his attorney, Albert Fish recounted the horrifying details of his heinous crime. The twisted narrative revealed a grotesque ritual involving the abduction, torture, and cannibalism of a young boy. The trial unfolded over 10 days, during which Fish's defense claimed he heard voices from God instructing him to kill children. Expert witnesses, including psychiatrists, delved into Fish's disturbing sexual fetishes, ranging from sadism and masochism to cannibalism and necrophilia. Dr. Frederick Wertham, the defense's chief expert witness, provided insights into Fish's obsession with religion and the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. Wertham explained how Fish believed that sacrificing a boy would be penance for his sins. The defense argued that Fish's mental condition was unique, with Wertham stating unequivocally, "He is insane." Prosecutor Gallagher cross-examined Wertham on Fish's knowledge of right and wrong, leading to the conclusion that Fish's knowledge was perverted based on his distorted views of sin and religion. The defense presented additional psychiatrists to support Wertham's findings. The prosecution called rebuttal witnesses, including Menace Gregory, former manager of Bellevue Hospital, who testified that Fish was abnormal but sane. The defense argued that Fish's perversions were socially acceptable. The jury, despite acknowledging Fish's insanity, found him guilty and sane, resulting in a death sentence. Fish arrived at prison in March 1935, and on January 16, 1936, he was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing. He actively participated in his execution, helping the executioner position the electrodes. Fish's last words, "I don't even know why I'm here," echoed through the prison walls. Rumors circulated about the execution, but it was later confirmed that Fish died in the same manner as others, in the electric chair. As we reflect on the trial and execution of Albert Fish, we confront the unsettling reality of a man whose gruesome acts shocked the nation. His final statement, a testament to his depravity, remains sealed, preserving the darkest secrets of a disturbed mind. The legacy of Albert Fish serves as a haunting reminder of the capacity for evil within the human psyche.
Step back in time to the chilling spring of 1928 when Albert Fish, infamously known as the Brooklyn Vampire, responded to a job ad that led to a horrifying encounter with the Budd family. Unravel the disturbing events as we delve into the sinister details of Fish's deception, his abduction of 10-year-old Grace, and the gruesome letter that would shatter the Budd family's world 6 years later. Viewer discretion is advised as we explore the dark chapters of true crime history. On May 28, 1928, 6 years before the letter written by Albert Fish would arrive at 406 West 15th Street in Manhattan, the Brooklyn Vampire came himself, responding to a classified ad placed by 18-year-old Edward Budd, Grace's older brother who was looking for work. Albert Fish posed as a Long Island landowner in need of a helping farmhand and arrived at the Budd family residence and introduced himself as Frank Howard. Budd's classified ad had mentioned farm experience, and Fish promised him impending work, saying he would return, and left with visions of killing Budd. Fish returned in June with hopes of torturing Budd, but then met 10-year-old Grace and had her sit on his lap. He convinced her parents, Delia Flanagan and Albert Budd, to allow him to take her to his niece's party. Grace was dressed in her finest clothes when she left her home with Albert Fish in hand. The seemingly friendly old man agreed to bring her back promptly. And he promised Edward that not only would his job pay him $15 per hour, but that his friend would be hired too. He claimed he would return to discuss those details further. Neither the man the Budd family knew as Frank Howard nor little Grace would ever return. Viewer discretion is strongly advised as we expose the darkest pages of this haunting true crime tale. My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894 a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned the boat was gone. At that time there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body and sold as veal cutlet, brought the highest price. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to New York he stole 2 boys, 1 7, 1 11. Took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and of course the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except head, bones, and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass, boiled, broiled, fried, stewed. The little boy was next, went the same way. At that time I was living at 409 E 100 St, rear, right side. He told me so often how good human flesh was I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3, 1928, I called on you at 406 W15 St. Brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her. On the pretense of taking her to a party, you said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not I would get her blood on them. When all was ready I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her though, I could have had I wished. She died a virgin. On February 11, 1927, 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with 4-year-old William Billy Gaffney. When the 12-year-old left for his apartment, both younger boys disappeared. Beaton was found later on the roof of the apartments. When asked what happened to Gaffney, Beaton said the bogeyman took him. Gaffney's body was never recovered. In this haunting exploration, we present the raw, unsettling words from a true criminal mind. This is the exact letter that Fish wrote to his attorney regarding Billy Gaffney. Viewer and audience discretion are strongly advised. I brought him to the Riker Avenue dumps. There is a house that stands alone not far from where I took him. I took the G-boy there, stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet and gagged him with a piece of dirty rag I picked out of the dump. Then I burned his clothes, threw his shoes in the dump. Then I walked back and took trolley to 59th Street at 2 a.m. and walked home from there. Next day about 2 p.m. I took tools, a good heavy cat of 9 tails. Homemade. Short handle. Cut one of my belts in half, slit these half in 6 strips about 8 inches long. I whipped his bare behind till the blood ran from his legs. I cut off his ears, nose, slit his mouth from ear to ear, gouged out his eyes. He was dead then. I stuck the knife in his belly and held my mouth to his body and drank his blood. I picked up 4 old potato sacks and gathered a pile of stones. Then I cut him up. I had a grip with me. I put his nose, ears, and a few slices of his belly in the grip. Then I cut him through the middle of his body, just below his belly button, then through his legs about 2 inches, below his behind. I put this in my grip with a lot of paper. I cut off the head, feet, arms, hands, and the legs below the knee. This I put in sacks weighed with stones, tied the ends, and threw them into the pools of slimy water you will see all along the road going to North Beach. Water is 3 to 4 feet deep. They sank at once. I came home with my meat. I had the front of his body I liked best. His monkey and pee-wees and a nice little fat behind to roast in the oven and eat. I made a stew out of his ears, nose, pieces of his face and belly. I put onions, carrots, turnips, celery, salt, and pepper. It was good. Then I split the cheeks of his behind open, cut off his monkey and pee-wees and washed them first. I put strips of bacon on each cheek of his behind and put in the oven. Then I picked 4 onions, and when meat had roasted about a quarter hour, I poured about a pint of water over it for gravy and put in the onions. At frequent intervals I basted his behind with a wooden spoon, so the meat would be nice and juicy. In about 2 hours it was nice and brown, cooked through. I never ate any roast turkey that tasted half as good as his sweet fat little behind did. I ate every bit of the meat in about 4 days. His little monkey was as sweet as a nut, but his pee-wees I could not chew. Threw them in the toilet.
The world of Tommy Lynn Sells, born on June 28, 1964, in Oakland, California, into a life woven with tragedy and turmoil. His father's absence and the loss of his twin sister, Tammy Jean, to meningitis cast an early shadow on Sells' formative years. After Tammy's passing, Sells found himself shuttled between family members, residing with his aunt in Holcomb, Missouri, only to be returned to his mother after she discovered an adoption plan. The darkness deepened as Sells, at the tender age of 7, sought solace in pilfered alcohol from his grandfather's stash. A disturbing relationship with an adult named Willis Clark unfolded, marked by allegations of molestation, and Sells claimed that his mother played a role in fostering the connection, leaving indelible scars on his psyche. Haunted by traumatic experiences, Sells began abusing narcotics at the age of 10, spiraling further into a troubled adolescence. 3 years later, he entered his grandmother's bed nude while she was sleeping, leading to him being banned from the house. Abandoned by his mother and siblings, Sells descended into rage, committing his first violent act against a woman. The journey into darkness continued as Sells embraced a nomadic existence from the age of 14, leaving a trail of crimes across the United States. Transient jobs in manual labor and barbering were overshadowed by heavy drinking, drug abuse, and multiple incarcerations. In 1990, a truck theft in Wyoming led to a 16-month prison sentence, during which Sells received a diagnosis encompassing antisocial, borderline, and schizoid personality disorders, severe substance use disorder, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, and psychosis. A harrowing incident in Charleston, West Virginia, in 1992, involved a brutal attack on Fabian Witherspoon. Sells, panhandling with a sign proclaiming "I will work for food," turned a moment of kindness into a nightmarish assault. Witherspoon's courageous resistance inflicted injuries on Sells, resulting in a plea deal on malicious wounding charges and a 5-year prison term. Behind bars, Sells was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and married Nora Price. Released in 1997, he left his wife and resumed his nomadic lifestyle, leaving a legacy of darkness in his wake. Tommy Lynn Sells' reign of terror came to a head with each gruesome crime leaving a trail of sorrow and horror. Police investigators, grappling with the enormity of his brutality, believe Sells murdered at least 22 innocent lives. Retired Texas Ranger John Allen hauntingly stated, "I know there's more. Obviously, we won't ever know." Sells' sinister confession alleged his first murder at the tender age of 15 in Mississippi, a response to a disturbing scene. Another unverified claim involved a 1980 killing in Los Angeles with an ice pick. However, a chilling series of connected or confessed crimes unfolded. November 17, 1987, Ina, Illinois, Sells confessed to the brutal murders of the Dardine family. December 18, 1988, Tucson, Arizona, Kent Allen Loughton, 51, stabbed and buried near a homeless camp. December 9, 1991, Marianna, Florida, Teresa Hall, 25, and Tiffany Hall, 5, bludgeoned with a wooden table leg. October 13, 1997, Lawrenceville, Illinois, Joel Kirkpatrick, 10, stabbed to death, his mother wrongfully convicted. October 15, 1997, Springfield, Missouri, Stephanie Mahaney, 13, kidnapped, raped, and strangled. December 14, 1997, Las Vegas, Nevada, 19-year-old Yvette Sophia Mueller was last seen in an RV park in Las Vegas. Sells claimed to have raped and killed a blonde-haired woman in Las Vegas, chopped her body up with an axe, and buried her next to the Snake River. The body was never found because it had been swept away by a landslide, but officials suspect Sells was referring to Mueller. April 15, 1998, San Antonio, Texas, Thomas Brose, 40, was a carnival worker who was shot to death in his motorhome. He was seen with a man matching Sells' description. Sells initially confessed to the crime but later recanted it. April 4, 1999, Gibson, Tennessee, Deborah Harris, 31, and her 8-year-old daughter Ambria Halliburton were both killed after Sells broke into their house at night and raped Harris in her bed. She was stabbed repeatedly with her own kitchen knife which was left in her chest. Halliburton was stabbed 3 times after she witnessed Sells murder her mother. April 18, 1999, San Antonio, Texas, 9-year-old Mary Beatrice Perez was kidnapped from a market festival, driven to a stockyard, raped, and strangled to death with her t-shirt. Her body was found in a creek 10 days later. Sells was convicted of the murder. May 23, 1999, Lexington, Kentucky, Haley McCone, 13, was kidnapped from a swing by Sells, dragged into a wooded area, and raped. She was then strangled to death with her t-shirt and covered with debris. Her body was found 10 days later. Sells was arrested in the area around that time for an unrelated charge. July 5, 1999, Kingfisher, Oklahoma, Bobby Lynn Wofford, 14, was picked up from a Love's convenience store by Sells, who drove her to a secluded area, sexually assaulted, struck repeatedly with a hatchet, and then shot her in the head with a large-caliber revolver when she tried to escape. He dumped her body off the side of the road and kept 2 of her earrings. On the fateful night of December 31, 1999, in the quiet Guajiao Bay subdivision west of Del Rio, Texas, Tommy Lynn Sells unleashed a horrifying act of brutality. The victims of his heinous crimes were 13-year-old Kayleen Katie Harris and 10-year-old Crystal Searles. Sells sexually assaulted and fatally stabbed Katie, and ruthlessly slit the throat of young Crystal. Miraculously, Crystal survived, navigating a quarter-mile to seek help from neighbors despite her grievous injuries. The aftermath of this tragedy unfolded as Sells was identified through a sketch based on Crystal's brave description. However, as the investigation progressed, law enforcement grew wary of Sells potentially manipulating the system. His confessions, while numerous, proved challenging to corroborate, casting doubt on the veracity of some of his claims. Among his unverified confessions, Sells spoke of a disturbing incident in 1982 in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he claimed to have kidnapped, raped, tortured, and murdered a woman, disposing of her body in a quarry. Another chilling account dated back to 1986, in St. Louis, where Sells recounted shooting a prostitute and discarding her in a river after a rejected proposition. Sells also alleged involvement in a tragic incident in Salt Lake City, Utah, in 1988, where he purportedly killed a woman and her son during a camping trip, dumping their bodies in the Snake River in Idaho. A string of other assertions included the killing of a black man in Chicago and the murder of two unidentified female hitchhikers in Roseburg, Oregon, both incidents occurring in 1989. The complexity of Sells' confessions extended to his involvement in the Dardeen family homicides in 1987 in Jefferson County, Illinois. Despite his confession aligning with some details, discrepancies and changing accounts led to a refusal to charge him for the quadruple killing. Sells' other crimes include: July 5, 1979, Port Gibson, Mississippi, John Cade, 39, was killed with a .32 caliber pistol during a home invasion. Near the crime scene, a man who resembled Sells was observed. He may have been in the area around this period, according to investigators. April 27, 1982, St. Louis, Missouri. In November 2015, Melissa DeBoer contacted police after watching an episode of Crime Watch Daily which featured Sells. In 1982, DeBoer's mother, Joanne Tate, 35, was murdered in her St. Louis home. Melissa DeBoer's testimony as a 7-year-old assaulted in the sexual attack helped identify Rodney Lincoln as the killer. However, DeBoer came to believe Sells, not Lincoln, murdered her mother in 1982. In 2018, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens commuted Lincoln's sentence to time served and he was released from prison. July 31, 1983, St. Louis, Missouri. Tiffany Gill, 4, and Colleen Gill, 33, were discovered at their house on Washington Terrace in the West End neighborhood. They had both been battered to death with a blunt weapon. A man matching Sells' description was seen leaving the crime scene. Sells, who at the time of the double homicide resided in the 3300 block of Edmondson Road in Breckenridge Hills, had relatives who lived in the St. Louis region. July 26, 1985, Springfield, Missouri. In July 1985, 21-year-old Sells worked at a Forsyth carnival, where he met 28-year-old Anna Court and her 4-year-old son Rory Court. Court invited Sells to her home that evening. According to Sells, he had sex with her, fell asleep, and awoke to find her stealing from his backpack. He proceeded to beat Court to death with her son's baseball bat. He then murdered her son because the child was a potential witness. The bludgeoned bodies were found 3 days later, by which time Sells had left town. May 1, 1987, Lockport, New York. Suzanne Corks, 27, disappeared after leaving a Lockport nightclub alone. Her body was found on September 5, 1995, at the foot of an embankment near Niagara Falls, 2 miles away. Her cause of death was unknown due to decomposition. In 2004, Sells confessed that he had murdered a woman in the area at the time, and his presence in the city was confirmed. He was even able to identify her in photographs from the crime scene. Since he had already been sentenced to death, he was not prosecuted. October 15, 1987, Lovelock, Nevada. Stephanie Kelly Stroh, 21, was last seen at the Four-Way Cafe and Truck Stop in Wells, Nevada. Sells confessed to Stroh's murder. He said he picked her up while she was hitchhiking after he offered her a ride to Reno, Nevada. They took LSD together, then he strangled her in Lovelock, covered her body in concrete, and dumped it in a hot spring. Her body was never found. Experienced the final chapter in Tommy Lynn Sells' twisted saga. On January 3, 2014, a Del Rio judge marked the ominous date for Sells' execution, April 3, 2014. The grim finale unfolded at the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville. Facing the ultimate consequence, Sells was given the chance for a final statement but responded with a chilling no, witnessed the somber moments as a lethal dose of pentobarbital took hold. As his breaths deepened, eyes closed, and an unsettling snore echoed. The minutes passed in an eerie silence. Less than a minute later, the once menacing figure lay still. At 6:27 p.m. CDT, the pronouncement came: Sells was dead. Crystal Searles and members of the Harris and Perez families were present to witness the closing chapter of this harrowing tale.
In the shadows of Tehran, during the early 1980s, a sinister chapter unfolded, a tale of terror orchestrated by a man named Majid. Majid was born into a bustling household, surrounded by the warmth of a large family. However, his journey took an unexpected turn as he dropped out of school in the 4th grade, driven by a lack of interest and struggles with grades. His father, recognizing the need for practical skills, set him on a path to work at the local market, a decision that would shape Majid's character and work ethic. As life unfolded, Majid entered military service, a chapter that brought both challenges and profound loss. His father's departure during this time left an indelible mark on his journey. Family and friends share poignant memories, reflecting on the impact of Majid's father's absence, a void that echoed through the years. With the weight of grief on his shoulders, Majid returned to the familiar echoes of the market, a resilient spirit emerging in the face of adversity. Love found its way into Majid's life as he married a teacher, forging a new chapter filled with hope and determination. Embracing entrepreneurship, Majid founded a decoration company, a testament to his tenacity and creativity. The initial success painted a promising picture of his future. Yet life's tapestry unfolded in unpredictable ways. Majid took on the role of a taxi driver, navigating the streets with determination and resilience. Majid's journey was adorned with moments of triumph as his decoration company flourished. However, the road was not without its challenges. In the ebb and flow of life, Majid faced financial hardships, culminating in a decision that would alter the course of his narrative: filing for bankruptcy. In the Mahmoudi case, one of the informants stated that Majid had been imprisoned for 2 years due to a bad check. After his release, he discovered a relationship between his wife and his cousin. The reasons for sparing these two individuals were never clear. Subsequently, he started to murder any woman whom he deemed disloyal to her husband.
Ominous stretch from 1981 to 1985, Majid plunged into a horrifying spree of violence, snuffing out the lives of at least 24 women. His victims, spanning an age range from 17 to 41, reflected the indiscriminate nature of his malevolent acts. Shockingly, among these victims were 2 innocent children, aged merely 11, their lives tragically cut short by Majid's sinister deeds. These 5 years unfolded as a haunting chapter marked by the relentless pursuit of justice for the lives unjustly taken during Majid's reign of terror. The macabre saga began its grim narrative in 1981. Akhtar, a 36-year-old woman, and her 2 innocent children, Mohammed and Faranaz, succumbed to the malevolence of Majid. This crime etched itself as one of his most heinous acts. As the year 1984 unfurled, Tehran transformed into a canvas for Majid's gruesome artwork. One by one, lives were extinguished. Tehran's Freedom Ghetto Checkpoint, Sharif Abad Gendarmerie Checkpoint, Amol Road, and beyond. The the grim discoveries continued. Women of varying ages met their tragic fates, their lives extinguished by the hands of a remorseless killer. After his arrest on May 8, 1985, Majid hanged himself in his cell. With his death, his case was closed forever.